Now on this particular model, if this was a real person, this would hurt like crazy. This is the spinal cord right here. Y'all see how the spinal cord is completely completely covered in bone? Protected is what I was trying to say. Now, the spinal cord has got to have nerves coming out, because we got to get nerves out here, right, into our toes. We've got 32 pair of nerves coming off the spinal cord, and these are just called spinal nerves. Now notice they're coming out holes in the spinal column. Y'all see those holes? Those holes are made by the way the vertebrae overlap. They have a name. The holes are called intravertebral foramen. Okay? So the intravertebral foramen lets the nerves come out and go to the peripheral nervous system. Okay? Y'all stop me if I'm going too fast. How many of y'all have heard of something called a pinch nerve? You ever heard of that? Can you see if this vertebrae gets messed up that it could actually pinch that nerve and cause a lot of pain? Okay. Now, what are these things in between each vertebrae?
Intervertebral disc.
Very good. Intervertebral disc. And they're made of what kind of cartilage on the outside?
Fibro.
Fibro. And that's pretty tough, isn't it? All right. Now, y'all would agree with me, these vertebrae are not the same size and shape all the way through. Here's a typical one from what region do you think this is from?
Cervical.
Cervical. I'm going to point out some things on this. First of all, y'all see these two holes right here? I'm going to put this probe on there. These two holes are called transverse foramen. Now I want you to look up here. See the arteries, the red arteries? Those red arteries are going through this transverse foramen. This is another set of arteries that takes blood to your brain. They're called vertebral arteries. So they have to go through these transverse foramen. But the main thing is those are taking blood to your brain just like the internal carotids are. Okay? Now, this structure that I'm holding right here, the very back, this is the spinous process. The spinous process. Can anybody tell me what part of the vertebrae I'm holding right here?
Body.
Body. That's correct. That's the body. Okay, let's move down to another group. What do you think this one's coming from?
Thoracic.
Thoracic. Let's look at some more structures. Here's your spinous process. Here's your body. What are these two guys that I'm holding right here? Okay, these are the transverse processes. So these are the sides, the transverse processes. Okay? Now, by the way, the purpose for all of these processes sticking here, this is a place for muscles to attach. This is a place for muscles to attach. Move on down. This one looks like it's going to carry more weight, bear more weight. What section do you think it's going to be from?
Lumbar.
Lumbar. Here's the body. Here's the spinous process. Here's the two transverse processes. Let's talk about this thing right here, the hole the spinal cord goes through. Do you think it has a name? What do you think we ought to call that?
Vertebral.
We're going to call it the vertebral foramen. Some people call it the spinal foramen. I take either spinal or vertebral. A couple other things. There's a piece of bone. Y'all look carefully. A piece of bone between the spinous process and the transverse on either side. Who tell me what that piece of bone's called? Between the spinous process and the transverse processes. Y'all ever heard of something called a laminectomy before? You haven't? Well, this is called the lamina. This is the lamina. And sometime if a neurosurgeon has to cut into the spinal cord, he'll have to cut out this lamina, a laminectomy, to get to the spinal cord. y'all watch Grey's Anatomy, that's one of the things McDreamy always had to do, was do laminectomies to get to the spinal cord. Okay? Now, last thing, this piece of bone right here between the transverse process and the body. I'm about to drop it. On either side, between the transverse process and the body, what would that piece of bone be called? The pedicle. Pedicle. Okay? Now, there's one other thing I want to go over with you.